Who's sleepy? Everyone's sleepy. Okay, looks like we're going to have to race through this, inshallah. So, I'm here because I was called, and I have to speak. I have to speak to you guys. Under different circumstances, everyone would be happier that I would be speaking to you guys, but I guess it is what it is. So I'll try to keep you awake as much as I can, inshallah. I was told to focus a little bit more on family and on parenting, and children who are growing up and relationships and that sort of thing. So inshallah, I'll try to focus on that. But I want to take a little bit of a different approach, and I want to spend more time addressing your questions than actually speaking. So for today, inshallah, I'd like to speak a little bit about something that is not very commonly spoken about, but I think it needs to be spoken about with regards to families, as far as nurturing and as far as our upbringing and what we instill in our children from a very young age, as far as they're growing up and as far as puberty as well. These are issues which not many parents speak about, and these are issues which need to be spoken about as far as instilling within our children the right understanding, because as they are growing up, the education that they are getting with regards to let's just call it gender interaction and education with regards to that, and I'm expecting at least that the elders and the adults will take my cues and will understand what I'm talking about, inshallah. And I'd like to speak about this topic only because when we speak about parenting, we speak about the usual stuff, like how to bring up children, how much time to spend, that type of thing. Styles of parenting. Should we be authoritarian? Should we be lenient? When should we be lenient? What should we do? When should we introduce the prayer, and so on? And these topics are very, very important, and I think that they should be spoken about and they should be discussed. However, I also think that issues relating to puberty and to related issues should also be spoken about. And I'd like to divide my talk into the stages of development, and inshallah, just very briefly, I just mentioned some of the practical benefits and the notes that I've taken with regards to the stages of development of a child, in the different stages of development, and what are some of the tips that we can take back, inshallah, in your sexuality education, basically. And I'd like to divide this into the various stages, from birth to 3 years, from 3 to 5 years, from 5 to 7 years, from 7 to 10 years, and from 10 to 14 years, and from 14 to 16 years, and reaching adulthood, so stage of adulthood as well. I'll just share with you, inshallah, very briefly, some of the tips and some of the facts, inshallah, with regards to this. So, in birth to 3 years, we find that there are children of all ages, at all stages of their development. The parents, they are guides for their children. They are guides for their children. And one of the things that I've learned growing up from my teachers, my parents, and also, researchers and people who are in the field of education, teachers, is that in this area and in other areas of development as well, one of the things that we fail to understand, which is you can take it as a principle, is that as parents, we think that our role is to be the controllers of our children, is to control what our children are exposed to and what they are not exposed to. And we think that as parents, if we insulate them, that our children will somehow be very safe. Our job is not to protect our children. Yes, at some level we play that role at a very young age when they are vulnerable and they are at an age when they are not able to feed themselves and so on. We take that protective role, and that protective role, it diminishes. At the end of the day, we need to understand that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who will protect our children. Our job as parents is to share life experiences with them and to educate them and to be a guide for our children in facing the experiences of life. In the same way that we've grown up and we've gone through challenges, we've gone through different experiences, and we've learned from those different experiences. How many of us, when we were growing up, we saw, for example, our parents, and we picked up something from our parents or from other elders, for example, aunties, uncles, grandparents, or whoever, our teachers, for example, and we thought to ourselves, either we picked up something that we wanted to replicate because we looked up to these people in the approaches that they took, in the experiences that they shared with us, or we looked at them and we said, I don't want to do what my father did. I want to do something different. Why? Because it had an adverse effect on me or whatever it is, right? So we will take either of these approaches. We will either say, I want to take this up because it really benefited me, or I want to do something different because it harmed me, right? So in simple, we take these approaches and we apply them even if it is at a very subconscious level. At a very subconscious level, we would enact things in our parenthood which we found to be useful or detrimental while we were children, in our childhoods. So we need to understand as parents that our role as parents is to share life experiences with our children, and some of these experiences, they will pick up these experiences and they will go with it because they will find it beneficial. And some of these experiences they will not pick up because they have a different understanding and they've had very different experiences growing up, and they find that what you share with them, they will find, very harmful perhaps. And maybe, they are at that stage of learning where they don't perhaps understand the benefits of what you're saying and what you're trying to instill in them. And perhaps at a later stage when they become parents or whatever, they will change their mind. Our job is not to make them change their mind or to force them to change their mind or to make them, you need to believe like this or you need to do like this. Our job as parents is to try to do our best, to be effective in sharing our life experiences and then leave them to make their decisions as they're growing up. At a very early stage, it's hard to do this. We need to make some decisions, obviously, for them. You can't be asking them, would you like to take this medicine or not? Right? If they're sick, they're sick. We need to make those decisions for them when they're growing up. But as they are growing up, you give them the autonomy in certain things where you test them. So for example, right, at a very early age, you would not be asking them, what time would you like to sleep? You would be putting them to sleep when they're at a very young age, when they're a baby. You would find the times which are most suitable for you as a mother I need to sleep, and so therefore I will try my best to have a schedule where I will try to do the feeding at this time, I will try to do this at that time, and I will try to put him or her to sleep at this time. And so you would be making those decisions for them. And to a certain extent, slowly as they are growing up as well, you need to go to school, and therefore, at the very least, the latest that you can sleep is at this time. They will have some leeway in, if you are really, really tired, you can sleep a little bit earlier than usual. And so that freedom will be slightly extended. As they are growing up, the decision making ability of when to sleep and when not to sleep, when they're in high school perhaps, they might be responsible enough to make their own decision. Why? I've got an exam coming up, I will perhaps be staying up late, maybe even until 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, because I need to do really well on my exams. And they will make that decision on their own. Right? You will not need to make that decision for them. So we need to understand that this will be the situation for our children. So with regards to, sexuality education, I think it's important that when parents become a guide and a friend, a child will not be afraid of asking the questions that they have, even with regards to these issues. A child starts asking questions as soon as they start talking, including questions related to the parts of their body. And naturally, young children, they will feel very strange while touching their organs and other parts of the body, as well as when they are cleaned and bathed as well, at a very young age, the age of 0 to 3 years. We find that researchers in this area as well, including Muslim researchers, they have said that if a child is touching themselves at this stage, there is no need to be alarmed. There is no need to be alarmed. After the age of 3 years, it should be explained to them that people do not consider this act proper. Therefore, when you are doing so in the presence of others, it should be avoided. Just as we avoid urinating and passing stools in front of others. And similarly, it should also be impressed upon the child that running around without clothes is not considered proper either. Now this is at a very early stage. Even though we might not be noticing it, we are giving them this kind of education. We are giving them this kind of education at a very rudimentary level. When we're telling them, you should not be running around without clothes, you should be properly clothed, you should not be doing this in public in the same way that you should not be doing your toilet in public. That is education that we are giving them at a very, very early age. Right? And so preschool children, they should be taught these good habits of hygiene as well. How to clean themselves in the toilet, and so on. Washing your hands after you come out of the toilet, and so on. And, basic rules of behavior. These things, they should be instilled in our children in a very explicit way. These are things that, perhaps many children will not pick up themselves. So for example, at that early stage when we teach them to wash themselves after they have relieved themselves in the toilet, that is not something that they will do on their own, where we can expect that, it's an understood thing. We will teach them, of course, we will teach them that you need to wash yourself like this, you need to take water before you go to the toilet, and so on and so forth. And these are things that we give them very basic and very foundational, education regarding. 3 to 5 years. At this age, the child becomes a bit more aware of his or her own body, and they can differentiate between a boy and a girl. They can differentiate between the two genders. And so they may also be told that the organ of urination in women, in girls, is different. In boys is different. And that, generally speaking, they may ask questions like, where did I come from? Or the parents, they should not be evasive at this stage, or tell the child that they were found among the cabbages in the garden, or that they were brought home from bunnies, right? We should not tell them these types of stories. It's not something that is useful for them and that will help in their development. At this stage, it is enough, to satisfy them by saying things like, I gave birth to you in a maternity hospital, in a hospital. Or, you grew in my tummy. You grew in my tummy. While the mother, is pregnant, for example, or the abdomen is bulging or whatever it is, a child should be told that she has a baby inside her abdomen. These are basic things. We don't need to go, of course, into explicit detail, but these are things that at this age, they are age appropriate, and we can give them this much information where we are not giving them, inaccurate information. It is very accurate information, but it is also very age appropriate. It is also very age appropriate where we are not going into the kind of explicit detail which is perhaps not very appropriate at this stage. And after the baby is born and so on, so we give them information like this. After the baby is born, the child came from the mother and so on. 5 to 7 years. 5 to 7 years, at this age, the children, they can understand the gender in a more developed way. They are interested in knowing more about themselves, but are shy to ask about these things. And it is therefore important that the parents, they find some opportunity to talk about these issues when an occasion arises. So, for example, at this age, the importance of marriage can be explained. That when you grow up, one day you will be married, and you will live a life with your husband or your wife. You will get married, and you will live a healthy life. At a basic level, you explain them that this is something that they can understand, and that there is a concept called marriage, and you have a husband and wife, and once you reach a certain age, then you get married, and you have a life, you have a married life, and so on. And young girls at this stage, and young boys as well at this stage, they are anxious about the changes that are perhaps happening in their bodies, or the body that they see. They are anxious about this, and so they may be informed that basic things like the changes in the body. These are the changes that happen in the body. At a later stage, in a few years, you might experience this, and you can tell them this at a very basic level, where you can just expect to, you can just inform them perhaps that there will be changes in your body. You might grow, you will grow bigger, you will grow taller, and so on. You give them basic details like this. Hair will start growing on your body, and so on. And you give them that understanding, and you tell them that these are expectations that you can perhaps expect in the coming years. Now, the reason why we do this at a very early stage, in a very age-appropriate way, but also in a very explicit way, is because, as we said, as parents, it is our job to let our children know and to educate our children about things that they are to expect in their lives, and to teach them about it. Why? What happens when they do experience it? If they don't have that education, do you think that they will be left uneducated about these things? No. They will be educated. But then, when they are educated about these things, is it really helpful if the education then that they receive about these experiences are coming from not credible sources? Maybe the education that they are receiving are myths with regards to that area. Maybe they are receiving that education from their friends, their peers, who are perhaps just as uneducated about those issues. Or perhaps they are searching in areas, in places where they will be receiving that education which does not have an Islamic foundation on it, or a value-based foundation on it. And so therefore, their understanding of gender interaction or their bodies or whatever it is perhaps distorted, or is not the type of education that we want them to grow up with. So it is almost like this. When we give them education, about what to expect at school, for example, it's their first day of school. There will be teachers. You will have to interact with other children. If you have problems with other children, you should not be fighting, and so on. If you have an argument or a disagreement with another child, you should not be fighting with them. You should tell the teacher, and so on. We give them this basic education about how to engage with other human beings of their age, their peers, right? We tell them what they are to expect even before they experience it. The same rules apply when it comes to education with regards to sexuality and with regards to puberty and gender education. That is something that we need to give them even before they experience it. We need to prepare them that these are the right ways of behaving, these are the right understandings of this, and when they do experience it, when they are exposed to it, they have a frame of reference in their mind. What am I supposed to do in this situation? They know exactly what to do. They know exactly what to understand when that situation hits. I don't know if I'm making sense. Am I making sense? So the stage, 5 to 7 years, at this stage, they should be given, Islamic books, and the parents should read to them. They may also be asked to memorize certain things at this age, about Tawheed, about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and about the role of the messengers, and so on. They should be taught about the mothers of the believers and the women role models, the male role models in their life. And they should be told stories at this time as well, with regards to how the men interacted with women and so on. And this could be done in a very subconscious way. You don't have to tell them things like, men should be like this or women should be like that. Tell them stories. It can be done in the form of stories as well, where when they are listening to these stories, they are getting examples of how to behave. They are understanding these models of behavior and models of thinking as well. And this is the age that they can remember, stories in books or poems and couplets or examples, anecdotes of different people and different personalities as well. The stage between 7 to 10 years, this is in fact a very, very crucial stage in the children's lives. As they are approaching puberty, or they are expecting puberty around about this time. And as such, boys and girls, they should be informed about the changes, for example, the physical changes, the physiological changes, the emotional changes as well. The emotional changes as well that are possible. And the possible effects of these changes as well. The measures of hygiene and the measures of diets that should be taken around about this time. They should be informed about the proper clothing to be worn during these periods as well. They should be informed about having a bath after the menstrual cycle, for example. And similarly, the boys, they should be told about nocturnal emissions. I'm using high words on purpose so that the adults understand, inshallah. They should be told about nocturnal emissions and hygiene with regards to this as well. Measures with particular reference to having a bath, for example, whenever it happens. And boys, they should be told persistently but tactfully about the urges that they have at this time. when they hit puberty, and the urges that they will have at this time, and how to stimulate, the proper ways of stimulating this, and the proper ways of fulfilling the urges that they have. It should be told to them the proper ways at this very early stage. Not at the stage when they are 18 or 19 or whatever. When they are legally, legally allowed to act, or 16 or whatever the age is, right? So at this very early stage, the age of 10, when they are about to experience puberty, that is the age when they should be told in an age-appropriate language what are the proper ways of behaving, what are the proper ways of fulfilling their urges. And of course, this education, it won't be as comprehensive as far as the language goes, and as far as, the medical, all of the technical medical stuff. But it will be enough, to give them a good idea of how to behave in these types of situations. And in this way, they will start, at this age, they start in taking less interest in their studies and so on. And one of the reasons we find is that as parents, we don't understand why are they not interested in studies. Why are they not listening to me? Why are they so distracted? Why are they like this and like that? For many of us, we don't remember our childhoods as we were growing up. Around about this time, young children are concerned and are anxious about these changes. They don't know what to do with it. And they are trying to figure it out. And as they are trying to figure it out, they are distracted from all of these other routines that is thrust upon them, like studies, like school, like meeting expectations at home, like chores and these types of things. And when these areas of their life which they are shy to speak about are left unattended, then their mind won't be in their studies and all of these things. Their mind won't be in it, because they have something at the back of their mind which they are not able to speak about, to anybody else. And so as parents, we need to preempt this and to give them that education. That will put them, inshallah, at ease, number one. And number two, it will give them the right education. It will give them the right education as well, and instill in them the right values at a very, very young age. At this age as well, they should be given really good books on relations between husband and wife, basic education, age appropriate, and this should be provided, to them as well. And they should be given religious responsibilities, the understanding of reciting the Quran and of fasting and so on. We find that the Prophet ﷺ, he has given this instruction for a very good and wise reason, that you instruct them to pray at the age of 7. That is the age when they have an understanding of responsibilities and so on. And at the age of 10, they should be appropriately disciplined upon this as well. Where, for example, there are rewards associated with certain behaviors, or there are consequences, associated with certain behaviors. At this time, they should be given that kind of education as well, with regards to their prayers and their religious responsibilities and other responsibilities as well. At this age, the children, they should be told to seek permission before entering rooms or houses of others, even maybe those of their parents or their elders at certain times. We find in the Quran, in Surah An-Nur, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually gives us this explicit education, that you don't enter at the time of Fajr. من بعد صلاة الفجر وحين تضعون ثيابكم من الظهيرة ومن بعد صلاة العشاء. After the Isha time, or in the afternoon, when, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he uses kinaya here. I'm sure many of you who understand Urdu, you understand what kinaya means, that you speak in very straightforward language. You use kinaya. What's the English word for kinaya? Similes or whatever it is, right? So In this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, in the afternoon when you dispose of your clothes. You know what that means, right? So in these times, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us very explicit education that these are the times when the permission needs to be sought when entering rooms even within the households, even by children. And so they should be taught this at a very, very young age. I'll race through the rest very, very quickly, inshallah. We have many, many questions, and I would prefer that we address the questions rather than me just talking about this, inshallah. The stage of 10 to 14 years, inshallah, just some very brief points. The youth, they pass through the secondary and higher secondary, stages of education. And at this time, they are understanding a lot more about human experience and human life. They need to be informed of those aspects very, very clearly. And at this stage, there will be many myths and misconceptions with regards to their organs, with regards to urges, with regards to their function, with regards to other matters of their body and the uses of their body and their urges and so on. And they will know a mixture of half-truths, they will know a mixture of half-falsehoods about their anatomy and about the normal functioning of their reproductive organs. They will have many myths about rights and obligations of the spouses in marital life, and about chastity, and about the right age of losing that chastity in a halal way or otherwise. And so they will have many myths and misconceptions and ideas at this stage. And so at this stage, parents and people who give them education with regards to these issues need to be a lot more explicit. We underestimate what our children know at this age. I've worked in a school, I know this. And educators who are involved in education, they know this as well. At this stage, it sounds very young, 10 to 14 years. It sounds very young. But trust me, at this age, our children, they know a lot more than we understand them to know. Right? They know a lot more than we expect them to know. And so at this stage, we feel shy to speak to our children more than they feel shy to speak to their friends or access material on the internet and so on. And so we need to step forward and give them explicit education with regards to these issues. We need to take that step. I'm serious. I'm very, very serious about this. At this stage, as parents, we have a very reserved approach with regards to what we educate our children with regards to these issues. And we need to take a step forward and understand that we need to give our children more explicit education with regards to this. Especially at this stage, we need to speak to them about marriage. We need to speak to them about, about diseases which are transmitted in this particular way. They should be informed about various things, various anatomical things, various medical issues with regards to these areas as well. The training of the young needs to be done at this stage, especially with regards to entering other people's private spaces, with regards to open mixing with the opposite gender, and the proper etiquette with regards to interacting with the opposite gender. Lowering the gaze, and even when necessary, even in the settings where necessary, with regards to the appropriate kinds of engagement, the appropriate kinds of interaction with the opposite gender. They should be informed at this stage, if not earlier, with regards to the categories of people. Who are your mahrams, who are not, who are considered, Islamically they're strangers. And what does that entail? What does that entail? Does that entail, for example, you'll have a different dress, for example, in front of those people who are perhaps not your mahram? The way you interact with those people, will that mean there is a difference between the mahrams that you interact with and the non-mahrams, the strangers that you interact with? Will there be a difference between the two? And what are those differences? Those things need to be very clearly delineated, and they should be conveyed at this stage as well. And at this stage, if not the age of 7, because this was instructed by the Prophet ﷺ, at the age of 7, that you separate even siblings in their sleeping spaces at the age of 7. Boys and girls need to be separated at the age of 7, at a very young age, even if they are siblings. They should be directed to use proper clothing and not to see the private spaces of each other as well. And the parents also need to keep an eye on their television consumption and the internet at home, and they should monitor this. And I'll say this also in front of the children, I don't mind, right? Many times we have this thing where, I don't want to encroach on the private, space of my child, what they see and what they don't. My dear parents and my dear children as well, right? Your parents want the best for you. Your parents want the best for you. When, inshallah, when you reach a particular age, you will have that autonomy. You will have that freedom, to make your own decisions. At the stage where you are living, under the roof of your parents' houses, that's the time when your parents are your guides, and they will keep in place certain rules, certain restrictions, where it's an opportunity for you to learn what are the right values in life. And then once you've learned those right values in life, it's your decision after that, once you have that freedom and once you have that autonomy. And as parents, we need to build within our children that level of trust. We cannot be where we tell our children, no, you have that freedom, and at the same time we go behind their backs and we spy on them. That's not the approach that we should take. We should be straightforward with our children and say, look, you can use the internet, you can watch television, whatever it is, but know that I am monitoring. Be straightforward with your children and build that level of trust with your children. If you are building that relationship with your children where you are telling them one thing, that you have the freedom, and at the same time you're behind their backs, you're spying on them and so on, that will not be helpful in building that trust between you and your children. You need to be on one side, you need to say, look, I'm being straightforward with you. You have certain amounts of freedom, but it will be monitored. I am your parent. I will monitor this. And so, use the internet, watch television or whatever it is, right? And have this consumption, this healthy consumption of information, of watching things and so on. But at the same time, you let them know that I will be monitoring this. These are the types of things that are okay to watch. These are the things that is okay to access. And apart from this, we will go on a discussion kind of basis. If you are unsure, come to me and we'll talk about it, and we will go in this manner. And so that is a healthy way of not just building trust, but also of instilling within them that there is a back and forth, and there is a consultation process as well, and that level of trust is built. And when we do this with our children, they will be more open to understanding our point of view and why we are instilling these values in our children as well. And I'll skip the rest. I'll stop here, inshallah. There is a lot more to talk about, but I think this was very, very important for parents as well as children, inshallah, in bridging the gap between what the children are going through as they are growing up and as they are developing, and also you know, the experiences that the parents face, you know, the challenges that the parents face in, you know, nurturing their children, and the balance between the right amount of freedom and the right amount of you know, restriction and so on. Inshallah, this serves as an introductory discussion for us to reflect on, inshallah, and to go back and to devise ways of how we want to bring up our children, and to think more about it, because it is only when we discuss more and think more about these things that we are able to make a conscious effort within our homes in making this possible, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He bless us, that He protect our children, that He guide our children, that He guide us. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He unite us with our families, with the prophets and the messengers in the next life, and that He protect us and our children and the generations to come in this life. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. Many questions here, inshallah. I want to get to questions straight away. You happy with that? All right, we'll get to the questions. I'll start from the back. It's only fair. What are some recommendations negative parenting that you suggest could be harmful for kids in terms of Islamic ways? And how can we increase Islamic values in our kids in some easy forms? In our day and age, it's quite easy. We just go online and just Google you know, Islamic parenting or something like that, and you would I'm sure it would come up with many results, and I'm sure you would find a book on Islamic parenting which gives you at least a basic start. We do these things all the time with many different things. So, like for example, you know, you haven't had a job before. Now all of a sudden the time is coming, you're 18, 16, whatever it is, and you're looking for your first job. How do you construct a good resume, a good CV? Well, if your father is a professional, and inshallah most of us have fathers like that, they will be the starting point, right? You'll ask them, how do I make a resume? And you will get help from them. Or someone else who you look up to, like an uncle or someone else, or an elder brother or someone like that, and they will be able to help you make a good resume. So the experiences that your parents have, that may be a start. But also along with that, one of the things that we do, apart from the people we have access to, we usually, you know, okay, let me YouTube this. These days, right? How do I change a tire? Go on YouTube. How do I change a tire? You can see it visually happening. Just watch the video. Okay, next I do this. Next I do that. The same way, right? We go online, and it's very easy. We find ways, and it's a trial and error type of thing, where we pick up the good things, and many times you will have well-researched books who give us really good suggestions on, you know, how to parent. So inshallah, this is a very good way. There are books out there on sexuality education from an Islamic perspective, you know, also parenting from an Islamic perspective. So inshallah, you can look it up. I'm sure there are multiple books out there which you can look into, inshallah. I know I'm not giving very specific information, but that's the best I can do at this stage, off the top of my head. How do we handle the LGBTQ being taught in society and as something normal? Well, in the same way that we educate our children regarding what are the proper ways of interacting with the opposite gender, and how to understand genders and understanding marriage and so on. We speak to them also about these issues. These are novel and new issues which have come up in our societies, and you know, there are ways of dealing with this. So the question itself, I think, answers the question, how do we handle the LGBTQ being taught in society? Being taught. It's being taught. So it's either the school is teaching, or someone else is teaching, or they're getting it in some other ways. We preempt that, we teach them. We teach them before they are taught. And so when they are taught from other places, they have already been taught what is the right, wrong way, whatever it is. And so when they do come across this type of information, they already know how to sift that information. Right? So inshallah, that hopefully that answers the question. As parents, we have a very crucial role in doing this. What checks are to be in place for teenage children to ensure that they are not doing anything wrong? As we've said, there needs to be a level of trust. Sometimes that level of trust can only be built through the experiences that we have. So as an example, our children go to school. We don't have access to them, what they do at school, what kind of friends they have, and so on. However, if we've built a relationship with our children where from a very young age they come from school and they are able to tell us, they are comfortable enough to tell us that this girl in school, she was bullying that other one or something like that. Or that person, that child in my class, they said a rude word to someone else. Example, right? If they are comfortable enough to tell us those types of things, and if we as parents have built a relationship with our children where it elicits from them the sharing of their experiences with us in their school life or whatever, right? That is an indication of the type of relationship that will nurture an understanding between the parents and their children in the future when the time comes. And so the first kinds of checks that we need to put in place with our children is our own modeling. Our own modeling and our own relationship with our children. Because regardless of what kind of rules we put in place or not put in place, right? All of those rules won't help unless, the effectiveness of the parents being in the lives of their children is there. If there is a disconnect between the parents and their children, then automatically the children will interpret the rules as being, my parents want to harm me. My parents don't want the best for me. Whereas when you've built that relationship with your children, even when you are disappointed and there is an expression of, I am upset with you, they will read that as, well, that's momentarily being upset with me, but they will understand that my parents love me. They want the best for me. Why? Because they have seen that my parents, they love me and they have tried their best to do, what they can for me. So I'll just give you an example. When children do something wrong, one of the ways of reacting is you get really upset and you give them a punishment or a consequence, and that consequence has perhaps nothing to do with trying to make them understand why this is happening, why something is wrong. All that's happening is they do something and the children get hit, or they get a whatever it is, like a detention. No wait, detention's only happening in school. A grounded, whatever it is, right? If that's happening and they don't understand what's happening, it's just behavior and consequence and nothing in between. It's just the anger of the parents that they see and nothing else. They are going to only interpret this as, I should not do this in front of my parents. That's the only thing that they will pick up from this. They will not pick up why I should not be doing this. They will not pick up, this is useful for me, or this is harmful for me. They will only pick up these behaviors, they will result in these consequences. And so therefore, I need to not do these behaviors when I expect these consequences to happen. And these consequences will only happen when I'm in front of my parents, when my parents find out, or when my teachers find out, or whatever it is. They will not be taught about the consequences are detrimental to me when nobody is around. And so that aspect of rewards or consequences needs to be a huge part of the upbringing of our children. When they do something wrong, we need to sit them, the first thing that we need to do is to drum inside them the understanding of why something is wrong. Look, the first thing is not, in the first instance, whenever you see my child did this thing wrong the first time in their life. If the first thing that happens when they did it for the first time in their life is you're grounded, or they get a shouting, whatever it is, right? That's not going to help them. The first time that thing happens, you need to sit them down and say, hey look, and it needs to be done in a very, very cordial, very congenial, very nice and understanding way, where they are not feeling unsafe, they are not feeling attacked. It is educative. You are calm, you are composed, you are loving, you are compassionate. And that happens for a good period of time until the message when you can see that the message has sunk in. And you find different ways of explaining to them. You find different reasons of why that thing is harmful or why this thing is beneficial. And you try to do that over a long period of time. And then, after you have realized that they have understood this concept, then you start associating rewards and punishments, or consequences, good, positive consequences and negative consequences of that type of behavior. Then of course, inshallah, the understanding of why these consequences are occurring will be much, much more better for them. I'll give you an example from my experiences, in teaching at the school. My practice, my own practice, my personal practice was, I would never give a child detention unless they understood why they are getting it. And it reached a stage where I don't have to tell them that you are in detention. I don't have to tell them you are in detention. When I look at them in the classroom and they've done something, and I say, hey, Muhammad, right? Like, Muhammad, they'll be like, should I come for recess? They ask me. It reached a stage where they are so informed about this that they know what are the expectations from them in the classroom, and they know what are the consequences of not meeting those expectations. And so, as an example, if we say in the classroom, if you need to talk, you need to raise your hands. Right at the start, you need to explain to them why you need to raise your hands. Why should I raise my hands when I can just speak? At home, I don't raise my hands to speak to my parents or my siblings. Why should I be doing it in a classroom? And so, the first stage is to tell them, raising your hands, this enables respect in a classroom. You have so many people in a classroom. You have 30 people in a classroom. You don't have 30 people in your house, unless your parents were very energetic. Right? In the classroom, you have 30 students. If even 2 people are talking at the same time, right? It causes a commotion. There's no respect, right? There's no understanding between the two people who are talking. Everyone's speaking over each other. No one's getting anything across. One reason. You find a whole heap of other reasons why raising your hands is beneficial in the classroom and it works in the classroom. Then, and you do that for a few weeks as an example. You try to explain to them, every time someone breaks the rule, right at the start, there's no consequences associated with it. Every time you just tell them, hey, raise your hands. And you take that opportunity, raise your hands because, and you come with the different reasons as to why. The next time that happens, raise your hand because, and you add an extra reason as to what's beneficial about raising hands. Do that over a period of time. Then they understand raising hands is something which has so many benefits, and not raising hands has so many harms associated with it. Then, after that, they know what are the reasons behind this. They are motivated to do this. Then you start introducing, if you don't raise your hands, I'll have to see you at recess. Right? Then you start introducing it in this way. In the same way, in the same way we do parenting, inshallah. And so these are the checks and balances at a basic level that we can keep. We keep an eye on, and in the same way, access to different things like television and internet. We need to take the time. We can't just be saying, I get exhausted when I come home from work. We need to sit down. Well, I don't care if you're exhausted. You start parenting after exhaustion. Why did you make children? You make children, you need to make sure that you put your time in, you put your energy in, and you give the best parenting that you can give to your children. And from that, they will see that you are very much invested in their well-being. And they will respond much, much better, inshallah. How do we handle teenagers' tantrums and mood swings? Wallahu a'lam. My own children, my daughter is now 12, so I'm expecting that. So I'll tell you when I find out. Inshallah. What is the best age for marriage in Australian context? Yeah, definitely not before the legal age. So the legal age for marriage is 18. I can tell you because I'm a registered marriage celebrant. Just advertising here if you need to get married. And the legal age of consent, I think, is 16. But the legal age for marriage is 18. That can only be reduced with a court order. So that's the legal side of things. So obviously the advice that I would give, the legal age for marriage and any time after that is a good time to get married. The Prophet ﷺ has said, يا معشر الشباب من استطاع منكم الباءة فليتزوج. Oh young people, those who are able to, then get married. So the Prophet ﷺ is advising, get married at a very young age, as early as is possible. And if you are not able to do so, then you find ways and measures that will protect your chastity, because at this very early age, the susceptibility to doing something wrong and to have those urges is something natural. And the only halal avenue for fulfilling these urges is through the institution of marriage. And so, as parents as well, I think we play a very strong role in what we tell our children are the right ages for marriage. So for example, if we tell our children, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to get a PhD, and then you need to get married. Well, if we give them that message from a very young age and we have these expectations, naturally, we can't blame them if until the age of 35 or whatever it is, 31, they are busy getting their PhDs, right? And they are not interested in marriage, but they still have urges, and between the age of 18 until the age of 30, they are involved in things which we are not proud of. Right? So, as parents, we play a huge role in what we tell our children as well. The best age for marriage, any time after the legal age, but as early as possible. I'll tell you for myself, the message that I got from my parents always, but obviously the option was always given, was early marriage is good. Even if you don't have the exact ideal financial means of buying your own house. My dear brothers and sisters, who has the ability at the age of 25, unless you're a very successful YouTuber or a millionaire or something like that, or a very good job at that very early age to buy your own house? Nobody. You're either renting or you're doing something to make ends meet, right? Making ends meet is good enough. As long as you can make those ends meet, and inshallah your partner, your potential partner, is happy to be in that situation with you, along with you as a partner, and for you to work together in the direction of a better place, then that is something that is good enough. Of course, this needs to happen with consultation. You can't just be like, I'm at this stage, financially at this point, and you find someone who has a very different lifestyle and who has very different expectations of you, and then you expect that marriage to work. That's not going to happen. You need to find someone who is compatible, who has a compatible way of thinking as well, and has a very similar outlook on finances and so on and so forth. You find someone like that, and you can make things work, inshallah. And the earliest age, I got married at the age of 21. And alhamdulillah, I'll tell you something. When I got married at this age, I was still doing my university studies. I'm still doing my university studies, by the way, Master. So I'm still studying and working as well at the same time. But even though I'm not 100% where I want to be in my career at this age as well, right? Alhamdulillah, I have a wife, I have children, alhamdulillah, I'm happy. To such an extent where I'm living in a house which is under my name. Alhamdulillah. It's way more than I could ask for at this age. And when you take those decisions for the better, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you in ways where you did not ever expect. When you have a good intention of protecting your chastity and being settled, I was much more settled when I got married at that age. At university, when you go to university, I'm sure the environment of the university is such that when you are not married, when you are not settled, most probably there will be distractions in your studies. Right? You're studying, but you have colleagues, go out with friends, do this, you have attractions, you have those urges, you don't know, you're struggling, whatever it is. When you're married, you're mentally much more settled, you're physically much more settled. And so therefore, you don't care about your friends and things like that. You're at a much more responsible place in your life. You're at a much more mature place in your life. And so therefore, you are able to give your best to your studies, your work, whatever it is. So there are many benefits, of course, pros and cons on both sides. But at the end of the day, I think the pros of getting married early, they far outweigh the cons. As long as you have the physical and the basic financial means to make ends meet, inshallah. So these are done. The best books for puberty and changes of body. There is a book, a small little booklet by an organization in the US. It's called Ilm Burst. They have a small booklet on puberty for boys and a small booklet on puberty for girls. That's a really, really good book. It gives you many tips also on how to prepare children for puberty and what you can do as parents, practical tips for parents in preparing your children for puberty and giving them the right education, inshallah. It's a really, really good book. There's another book also.